Hey guys, my name is Nicolette Mashile. I am also known as the Financial Bunny. Welcome to the Financial Bunny TV. Today we're going to be talking about how to invest in your credit score and why it's so critical to invest in your credit score. Now, do remember, none of my videos constitute as financial advice. If you are, however, looking for financial advice, please do speak to somebody that is certified and registered with the FSCA. So let's jump straight into it. Last week, the Monetary Policy Committee made the announcement to say they are going to be hiking the repo rates. Of course, that means the prime lending rate also goes up. It's currently sitting at 11.75%, raised 50 basis points from 11.25, now at 11.75%. That is an incredibly high hike in the interest rate. And it ultimately just means that things are going to become even more expensive. So one, accessing debt is going to be more difficult because lenders and credit providers are going to be a little bit more critical in terms of how they're going to be borrowing their money out, right? So that's step number one. Step number two, if you do have any accounts, whether it's a loan account, it's a credit card, it's a home loan, it's a car loan, and those are on a variable or a linked interest rate, it means that your installment is going to go up. Right? So those are the two things that you've got to keep in mind. It's very, very important. It also means that you might only be able to access a smaller credit facility. So for instance, if you had applied for a home loan a year ago, right, with those interest rates versus what you would apply and get now with the same affordability, you may find that now it has shrunk. It's a little bit smaller. Again, it's because lenders and credit providers are a little critical in terms of how they lend. So let's remember quickly, how do they lend? They lend on two criteria. The first one is, of course, affordability, right? So can you actually afford the repayment of this loan that you are actually applying for? So if it's a credit card, can you pay back the repayment? So they'll give you a credit limit based on your affordability. The second one, which is quite a big one, is, of course, what is your risk profile? So are you a risky person or are you somebody who's not risky? Are you somebody that has experience with credit? Have you shown and demonstrated good credit management? Do you pay on time? Do you pay what you're supposed to pay? That is important. So that's your credit history. And that credit history is basically put together through a score. And that score is what's called your credit score. So remember, you are an investor to a bank or a lender, right? They look at you and they're like, okay, if we borrow this person 5 Rand and we borrow them at 10%, we're going to get our 5 Rand back plus the 10%, which we have, which is the cost of borrowing. That's basically what it comes down to, which is why it's always so weird when we get this question and people say, if I buy a VW 2.0 TSI, what, 0 to 100 in 10 seconds, how much will I be paying? Look, people can give you a guide of how much you will be paying, but ultimately it is dependent on your profile. So your affordability and, of course, your credit profile. That is what's going to determine how much the bank is willing to give you and at what terms and conditions. So very, very important. That's why you will see now, even though there are high interest rates and things are not looking great for everybody, there are still people who will go out there and still go and get themselves a credit card. They'll still go get a home loan. They'll still go buy new cars simply because they can and probably are in a better position to negotiate, even though the prime lending rate is sitting currently at 11.75. So it's very critical for you to understand this because it will ultimately explain why it is important to invest and take care and nurture and improve and maintain a good credit score, especially when you do not need it. Because when you do now need it, when situations are looking like this and there's a high interest rate environment, ultimately you still are able to negotiate for better terms and conditions. And it's happened to me recently, but I'll get into the example of how it has happened to me, right? I want to talk a little bit about something that happened to me, which is one way in which you can also invest in your credit score. So 2 weeks ago, I went home to Bushbuckridge. I'm doing a project there. And on my way there, driving there, now Bushbuckridge is very far, okay? And I don't like stopping at rest places or petrol. So I will pour petrol here in Johannesburg and I want to drive straight to Bushbuckridge. The only stop that I possibly will make is if I get stopped by the cops because I'm driving too fast or if I'm stopping at a toll gate. Other than that, I am trying to stop, right? But something almost stopped me. It was an SMS that came in and it said, please pay your outstanding FNB, your overdue FNB account. And I was like, what overdue F&B account do I have? And I was wrecking my brain trying to think of all of my accounts. And I'm like, no, man, I know all of the accounts I have. I've got bonds, I've got car loans, I've got a credit card. That's about it. I do not have anything that is outstanding. Then I started thinking, okay, what date is it? Have I missed payments? But I'm like, there's no way in which I can miss payments because I've put in a system to never, ever be able to miss payments, right? So I kind of ignored it. But at the same time, I was a bit worried because I was like, okay, this is very stressful because I'm going to have to trade in my car later on in the month. So I was thinking about trading in my car in. And remember, I mentioned this in another video where I said, when you're trading your car in, essentially what the bank is going to do or what the dealership is going to do, they're going to buy your old car. They're going to settle if you've got a finance, right? Or they're going to settle your car. And then they're going to have to restart you on a new credit agreement with a bank again. So they have to go back to the F&I person has to go back to the bank again to go and apply for a credit facility or a car buying credit facility on your behalf. So essentially, you still have to be in good standing and still qualify for the new credit agreement. That's essentially what it comes down to. But I'll tell you, if you qualified for the first one, you should be fine. They're lying. They're lying. You should not be fine. Yes, it goes without saying that if you qualified for the first one, the chance that you may qualify, but people's circumstances change. Their finances change, their affordability changes, their credit status changes. For instance, mine even changed because in between the last time I bought a car on credit, I also went to buy one for my mother. So my commitment is now quite higher than it was when I bought the car the first time. So it's things like that you've got to keep at the back of your mind. So I was a little bit worried because I don't want this to become a hindrance when I'm trying to get my new car, right? Anyway, I was worried, but I was not worried. I was worried again, but I was not worried. So I thought, let me call these people and ask them, what are they talking about? Then I forgot as I was driving home. As I said, I concentrate when I drive home, right? Then I come back to Johannesburg last week, Friday. I get another text and it says, you don't want to talk to us, we understand. Just make a payment on your handed over F&B account. Again, I'm like, F&B, I do not owe you money. Who are these people that are hounding me for money? I'm not impressed. And then I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe it's time to take care of the situation because you know what? It feels like it's starting to get out of hand, right? So I jump onto the first thing that would tell me that I do not have, or would at least affirm that I do not have that account. What is it? I jump onto my credit score, my credit report. So I go to Clear Score, I pull my credit report. There's no outstanding F&B accounts. I'm like, sigh of relief. But then I'm like, hey, but Clear Score sometimes doesn't have all of your stuff, right? So Clear Score is by experience. So I jump onto CompuScan. CompuScan, nothing. Then I'm like, okay, maybe let me jump onto TransUnion. Nothing again. And I'm like, bro, come on, man. Something is not right here. I don't have this outstanding F&B account. Maybe sometimes you take out accounts in the middle of the night, you don't remember. Maybe you're at the club at Konka or you are Gemeli and there you are needing quick temporary loan and you forgot to pay about it. But I was like, no, there's no ways, right? So checked and nothing. Then I picked up the phone and called these guys. I'm like, hi. You keep sending me this text and I'm not really sure what you guys are talking about. So then I realized, no, actually it's of an ex-employee of mine. So I'm thinking maybe what this ex-employee did is maybe they wrote my number as surety and what, or I don't know, but they essentially wrote my number because I remember actually randomly I got a call and they were looking for this person. And I was like, guys, I am not this person. You keep calling me looking for this person. I'm not this person. This person used to work for me. They no longer. And you know what? I'm a good person. If you put my name as a reference or whatever on your credit application and you've decided to abscond and you don't want to pay and they keep calling and looking for you, I'm such a good person. Now I won't paisa you. I won't give them your new number. I will simply just tell them I don't know who you're talking about. So anyway, so eventually we cleared this up. So I said, guys, please remove my number because as I've been saying, this is not me. Stop sending me these SMSs. You're going to give me a damn heart attack, right? So now, thinking about this, and I was like, okay, actually, maybe because I'm going to get a new car, let me actually check what my credit score is. My credit score is absolutely excellent, right? And this has proven correct and proven my theory on the fact that you can invest in your credit score. So I've been doing my best to make sure that I'm taking care of my credit score. So now I've been in this process of trying to trade my car in, right? So traded my car in, got a settlement, they settled it, got a new car, right? Or at least I am in the process of getting a new car. Then they get the financing deal. Guys, it was the worst financing deal I've ever seen in my life. It had a balloon payment. The interest rate was like at 13%. I was like, nah, no. Go back to my bank and go tell them that I said they need to speak to my private banker and they need to come back with a better deal than this. Went to my private banker. The private banker went to West Bank, spoke to the guys at West Bank, and they came back with another rate. And I was like, still, I sent him an email. I said, go back and ask them if this is the best that they can do. Come on, man. Interest rates have just gone up. They need to do better than this. You know what I mean? And they actually came back with a reasonable rate, right? They came back with a reasonable interest rate, no balloon payment. And I was like, good shot. This is exactly what I want. This is what it means when we talk about banks wanting to retain you as a client, but also most importantly, believing in you as an investor for them because you've also invested in your credit score. So it's quite important, but how do you actually get it right? These are basic things. We're not talking about very complicated things that only the select few in society can do them. It's very, very simple. If you are going to take on credit, you have a responsibility to make sure that you are managing that credit correctly. What is managing your credit correctly? Number one, it's making sure that you are putting in measures to make sure that you never miss a payment. I've done it. Debit order. Guys, put in a debit order, especially for debt, because it's very, very difficult. And I can tell you now, I've got a letter that comes from the city of Johannesburg that says I owe them rates and taxes and what. And it's not because I can't afford it. It's simply because I forget to make those monthly payments. Also because we don't have electricity half of the time. So I'm like, what is the justification of paying these people? Because we definitely don't have electricity for at least 9 hours of the day. So why am I paying? You know what I mean? But I do need to pay. So the reason why I don't pay or forget to pay is because it's not on a debit order. I'm busy and I forget to pay. But I know that all of the things that are on a debit order, they run through. And you know what the funny thing is? You generally remember if you are the type of person that budgets in your head, you must stop it. But if you really are the type of person that does budget in your head, those are the numbers that you remember because they are frequent, they are predictable, and they come at you. So you see, the problem is a lot of people don't budget well because they don't have things on debit order. They don't remember them because those things are not predictable. So make sure that your payments, your repayments are predictable. Automate them. Put them on a debit order. That's what I've done, right? If I want to pay extra, then I'll do the payment in by myself and if I have a little bit of disposable income left. So number one is make sure you're putting things on a debit order. This is to ensure that you are paying and you are paying on the right date. Because another thing that people do is, so they miss their payment and they're like, okay, no, my payment is supposed to run on the 21st. I'll pay on the 23rd. No, you've missed the payment. The thing is, you are breaching the contract because the agreement is that you're going to pay on the 21st. But when now you've decided to pay on the 23rd. So technically, what does the machine do? It makes it a missed payment. Right. The second thing is that the debit order, when it goes off, it will be the right amount of money. It will be the minimum monthly repayment that you're supposed to pay. So if you're supposed to pay 3,000 rand every month and you decide, oh, I'm going to make my own payment, actually, it's not enough money this month, so let me pay 1.5. No, that is a breach of agreement. You are not doing the right thing. That's not managing credit agreement correctly. Because you said you're going to pay 3,000, you can't decide to pay 1.5. That's not how it works. You have to make sure that you pay the required minimum monthly payment. So you've got to pay it on time, and you've got to pay the right amount of money. So, and also, if you're going to make it a debit order, guys, please make sure that there's money in there so that you don't have a double whammy of a missed debit order because they will charge you for the missed debit order and then you still need to pay the money for the debit. So make sure that you've got enough money, right? The second thing that you've got to worry about when investing in your credit score is making sure that you are keeping to below 50% of your credit utilization. So what is your credit utilization? Let's use a credit card, for instance. You go to the bank, you apply for a credit card, they give you a 40,000 Rand credit limit credit card. That doesn't mean you've got an extra 40,000 Rand. Somehow people forget that a credit card is not their money. So they think, oh, I'm going to supplement my salary. I got 20,000 Rand on my salary, then 40,000 Rand on my credit card. So actually I can afford to spend 50,000 Rand, 55,000 Rand, 60,000 Rand. No, homeboy, homegirl, that ain't your money. That is the bank's money. All they're doing is, here's money if you need it. Now, the question is, do you got the discipline not to spend money that is not yours? And if you do spend it before the billing cycle ends, are you going to pay it back and make sure that you reset your credit limit back to the 40,000 Rand so that you're not charged interest. Remember, they don't charge you interest if you don't have an outstanding balance on a credit card. Very important to remember this, right? So make sure you understand this. So what we're saying is use less than 50% of that 40,000 Rand. So use less than 20,000 Rand. This is indicative of the fact that you are not dependent on this additional money that actually is not yours. If you use the whole 40,000 Rand, you look to credit providers like you actually need an extra 40,000 Rand every single month. So you are dependent on credit. So actually, you better go get a job that pays you 60,000 Rand because that's what you're living off. You've kind of lifestyled your way to living off 60,000 Rand and not the 20,000 Rand that you actually earn. This happens a lot of people also do overdrafts. They get stuck in the overdraft, and then now you've got an overdraft. Now when your salary comes in, maybe you earn 20,000 Rand, but you've got an overdraft of 10,000 Rand. When your money comes in, it sits at 10,000 Rand, but you need 20,000 Rand. So at the end of every month, before your salary comes in, you're sitting on minus 10,000 Rand. That's living in an overdraft. Don't do it. That also is using too much of the credit that has been given to you. So if you use too much of it, and if you go above the 50% threshold, you look like somebody that is dependent on credit. Right? I know we do this thing with our credit card where we pay some money in the beginning of the month and when we get our salary, and then we use that same amount of money again. But you're actually using less because they actually charge you, but you don't see the charge, right? Most credit cards, you won't see the charge until you see it because the charge is charged to the same account. For many people, they don't separate the charge account and the credit card account. It's charged on the same account. So you never really see it. You never really see it, but it's there. If you actually go through your credit card statement, you will pick it up. So very important to be wary of that. Credit utilization must be kept under 50%. The next thing is stop with consenting to credit checks. I know it's confusing, right? Because a credit check means you also doing a credit check on yourself when you check your credit report. However, the difference is you are checking your credit score, whereas somebody else is checking for an ability for you to repay back. Those are two different things. So, for instance, if somebody from your job, you're applying for a job and they check your credit score, that is a person checking whether or not you are in good standing. If you check yourself, you again also are checking if you're in good standing. But if the bank checks, the bank is checking whether or not you're going to be able to repay back. That is ultimately checking for actual credit. So when you check for actual credit, that's called a hard inquiry. When you check for good standing, that's called a soft inquiry. So you want to minimize the hard inquiries because if there's frequent checks on those, it makes you again look like you're somebody that lives off credit. That you are so dependent on credit, you're going to check every single month if you actually apply, if you will get approved for credit. So it's important to minimize those checks. Very, very important. The next thing is to have a credit score. I know a lot of people come to me and they're like, but why must we take a date to get a credit score? I'm like, you just need credit. You don't need a credit. You don't need date. You need credit. It's just that the unfortunate consequence of having credit is that you end up with a liability, which is called debt. That's how it works. But you can have a credit card that you never ever have to pay any interest on because you use it and then you pay it off at the end of the month. You will have a credit. You will have credit behavior because you're taking care of that credit facility that has been granted to you or borrowed, temporarily given to you. And that's it. So you do. So remember, think about it this way. If you apply for a job, they ask you for your CV. On your CV, what are they looking for? They're looking for education, credentials, and they're looking for job experience. This is to say to them, or at least give them some indication that when you know the job. So it's also the same thing with credit. The credit provider wants some indication to say this one can manage credit. So that's how it kind of works. So it's important to understand why you must have a credit score. Should there be a better suitable system? Yeah, they've tried out some systems. One of the systems that they tried out is professionals. So they bank on the fact that if you're doing a professional degree, you are going to be profitable and you're going to have money. It's not always true. We've seen many doctors, we've seen many auditors, we've seen many CAs, we've seen many architects, we've seen all sorts of professionals not manage their money well and actually just don't qualify for certain things simply because they just don't know how to manage money. Your qualification does not equal good money management skills. I don't care what qualification you are doing. You can be a doctor, you can be a nurse, you can be a teacher, you can be an auditor, you can be an engineer. It doesn't always equal to good money management skills. Those are different sets of skills that you've got to learn on your own. So it doesn't matter. So that system doesn't really work out well, but I know that several of the banks and financial institutions have tried to use it to be able to see whether somebody would be a good person to borrow or at least advance credit to. The next one is don't get defaults, don't go into debt review, don't go into debt counseling. All of those things, any type of debt management tool that you use will ultimately hurt your credit score. So payment holidays will hurt your credit score. Debt review will hurt your credit score. Consolidation will also hurt your credit score temporarily. So every single thing that changes the terms and conditions of the agreement you signed will ultimately hurt your credit score. Some short-term, some long-term. So it's important to understand what it is that you are doing. I know people like to go and create these payment plans and they negotiate and do all sorts of things. Think also about your credit score and what type of impact this is going to have. Being taken to court by a creditor will have an impact on your credit score. Debt review is a legal process which will have an impact on your credit score. In fact, when you're under debt review, you can't take out any more credit. So it's important to understand these things, right? Very, very important to understand that all of these things that you are going to be doing, they ultimately are going to make sure that you are going to invest in your credit score. So the day you need it, you get to actually negotiate for better terms and conditions. That's basically why it's important. And that's why you can see people, even in a high interest rate environment, who can get good terms and conditions on their credit because they've invested in their credit score. I'm going to leave it here because it's becoming a long video. And I'll see you guys on the next one.